From the Banner offices along the Inner Harbor, it is the Banner Baseball Show. Paul Mancano, John Mioli, and beat reporter Andy Kostka joining us here on a special Thursday edition of the Banner Baseball Show. We got a lot to talk about here on today's show. We're going to talk about this woeful Baltimore Orioles team that was just swept by the Tampa Bay Rays. We're going to talk about what has gone wrong so far, the Orioles hitting philosophy, all of the discussions around this team that have been swirling for the past 24, 48, 72 hours and well beyond that. All that and much, much more. But first, let's get a quick word from our sponsor. Toyota knows your day doesn't slow down, so your vehicle shouldn't either. From the efficient Corolla and always-ready Camry to the adventurous RAV4 and spacious Grand Highlander, plus many models available with all-wheel drive, Toyota builds a lineup that shows up for every kind of driver. And right now, great financing and lease options are available to qualified customers, making it a perfect time to find the one that fits you. Find a great deal today at Toyota.com. Toyota, let's go places. All right, guys, let's start off with this.
Do you think the Orioles should get a Toyota to go places?
People are just throwing stuff out there now at this point.
Get in line. We're in line first.
Yeah.
Paul and I.
We are
and
on.
then the Orioles.
We need our Toyota first. John and I will split a car.
The family car.
Yeah, a family car.
Speaking of family.
Speaking of family, I did watch the fourth installment of the Fast and Furious film, but I don't want to waste Andy's time here. I'll save it for when it's just you and me, John.
Yeah.
But I have thoughts.
Don't watch 5 without me. I think we should watch 5 together.
That would be
the moment.
Let's do a live watch of it and stream it, our reactions. There were some incredible moments. All right, anyway, we'll talk about the Baltimore Orioles here because we have Andy on here, who is just in St. Pete to cover this Baltimore Orioles team that was swept by the Tampa Bay Rays, the AL East leading Tampa Bay Rays. Orioles fall to 21-29. They lost game 1 16-6. They lost game 2 4-1, and they lost game 3 5-3. And I thought going into the eighth inning, I should say, of that game, John, that they were going to do that thing where they lose a bunch of games in a row and win right before our podcast so that we can't fully bury that team. And then they blew they blew the lead.
Yeah.
Gave up some runs in the 8th inning, went down 1-2-3 in the 9th inning. And this team right now is not playing good baseball, and they're not doing the kind of stuff that the Rays do. They're not playing crisp baseball. They're not playing clean defensively. They're not pitching. They're not hitting consistently. I'll start with you, Andy. What is going on with this Orioles team? And I know the answer is going to have I don't know in there somewhere because nobody can truly figure this thing out.
Yeah, I got cut off of 105.7 The Fan the other day for saying the SHIT word. But stuff happens. And unfortunately, everything that could go wrong has gone wrong for this team right now. And let's rewind. Starting with the finale, that's just such a gut punch of a loss for Baltimore and Tampa. 2-run lead. Shane Baz, in his return to St. Pete, pitching at Tropicana, throws a gem, his best start of the year, 6 innings, 1 run. Baltimore can't afford to waste good starts because they haven't gotten enough of them. And they had good starts from Kyle Bradish the day before, 2 runs in 5 1/3. They had a great start from Shane Baz. They wasted both of them. And that is going to be, it's just kind of an example of the multifaceted issues that this team has currently. And if you think about it, since June 21st, 2024, Baltimore is 22 games under 500 or 23 games under 500. They're more than 20 games under 500. I know that for a fact. So this is a long-standing issue. And unfortunately, pitching does well, and then the hitting doesn't show up. Hitting, shows up, at some point they have pitching issues. Yesterday was bullpen collapse with 2 outs. And, it's funny how many 2-out rallies Baltimore is giving up. It's kind of emblematic just of the overarching issues that the pitching staff has, right? So like if you're not performing well from a pitching perspective, of course, it's going to trickle down into every situation. So, but just one particular one is 2 outs, which I just wrote about this morning or last night that I published this morning. They've allowed 118 runs with 2 outs, which is 43% of Baltimore's total runs allowed have come with 2 outs, which it probably just feels worse because you're like, oh my goodness, you're 1 out away from getting out of the inning. I mean, certainly that plays a part in this. But it is, yeah, I mean, this is, it's very possible. And I, I've already been, I've in some hot water for various things I've said to various people with the, in terms of how this team is looking, but like, it's very possible this team is just not very good. Like, yeah, that's possible.
John?
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely not good right now. I don't think anyone's gonna get in trouble for saying as much. Now,
I would hope not.
Yeah, well, cuff me. Those watching on television can see me holding on my hands for handcuffs. Everything that you said is right there, and I think what is challenging at this point is that the problems are two scales that you wouldn't have expected them to be. It's not as if, there's a difference between looking at the Orioles rotation in February and being like, how does this stack up 1, 2, 3 in October ALDS against the Yankees? You could have legitimate concerns about that, and I think that was fair to say. It wasn't like, how long is it going to take before any of these guys, until we can get a quorum of Orioles starters who have an ERA that starts with a 4? Like, that is where we're at right now. Those are different problems than you would have expected. I think, offensively, there's a lot going on and not a lot of it is good. And you look at it and it's like, on the one hand, you could have expected a lot of things to have changed just by virtue of health, by virtue of new players, all these things that were true. And some of them have been true. Imagine if they didn't have the offseason that they had. I mean, my gosh. Offensively, it would be a complete nightmare. On the flip side, a lot of the same players are having the same problems. So there's just a lot of push-pull right now that makes it pretty complicated to kind of unbraid. And what you have is kind of just a big knot, basically. It's just nothing's happening smoothly. You can't get a comb through. You can't do anything you want to because it's just a ball of stuff, and you pull one way and something else happens. And as different as so many things are from this year to last year, one thing that is true in all sports is that sometimes when stuff starts happening, it's really hard to stop it happening. The Orioles can't just take a week off and be like, all right, we're just going to stop. They can't just punt games and be like, all right, we're going to go back to work. They have to play every single day, except for today. They have to keep going. And it's really hard to stop whatever bleeding, for lack of a better word, is going on. And that's where I kind of feel like they're at right now. The problems are very identifiable. The solutions are there's 2 paths in front of them. They can try to change things, or they can be like, we are doing a good job and this is going to correct. But those 2 paths discount the fact that they still have to play, and something better has to happen just to reverse the bad stuff. Yeah.
I think what's frustrating for a lot of fans right now is they watched that series in St. Petersburg and said, these are 2 very different teams right now, in the Rays and the Orioles, going in 2 very different directions right now. John, you wrote about on thebanner.com, where people can subscribe, $1 for 6 months, where you can also read Andy's great story as well about the Orioles struggles with 2 outs. But you wrote about the hitting philosophy. And on Saturday, manager Craig Albanez was asked about the idea that the Orioles are still hitting the ball hard. They are near the top of the league in hard hit percentage, but it is not leading to runs being scored. And that is a philosophy, that is an inherent philosophy of the Orioles organization. Hit the ball hard, get off your A swing on pitches that you can do damage on, and do damage. And what he said was, he chuckled and he said, I'm just laughing because it's the assumption that if you just poke the ball in play, it's going to be a hit. I think we all know that in this game, at this level, when you hit the ball soft, it's probably not going to be a hit with how elite these athletes are on the field, end quote. Well, guess what? The Rays have the worst barrel percentage, hard hit percentage, exit velocity, and expected slugging percentage, according to StatCast. The Orioles are near the top of the league in hard hit percentage, exit velocity. They have a better barrel percentage and expected slugging percentage than the Rays. The Rays are 8th in runs per game. The Orioles are 17th. The Rays are hitting 30 points higher on batting average. The Rays are first in MLB in zone contact percentage. The Orioles are 21st. So what does that tell you? It tells you that hitting the ball hard, absolutely, it is a known fact. Your expected batting average goes up the harder you hit the ball, no question. But common sense also tells you that nothing good is going to happen if you swing and miss at a pitch. And what the Rays don't do with a pitch that is in the strike zone is swing and miss. They make contact. The Orioles don't do that. They're trying to get their A swing off when there's runners on base, when they have 2 strikes, when they have 2 outs, and they're swinging and missing a lot of the time. And when they're hitting the ball hard, but they're not doing it enough. And on the flip side of that, and we'll talk about the defense in a little bit because it has been a consistent problem, and the Rays just put up a masterclass in terms of defense, as they are wont to do this weekend. If you play poor defense, those softly hit balls fall in for base hits, and players make errors on those softly hit balls. So you get more base runners. So the whole idea that if you hit the ball hard, you get a higher batting average, sure, but that's just one piece of the pie here. And so that cannot be the only thing that the Orioles have going for them in terms of their offensive philosophy. They have to understand that you have to hit the ball in order to hit the ball hard, and you have to hit the ball in order to get on base for the most part.
Yeah. So yes, that is all true. And the flip side, and kind of what I wanted to get at, is that like all those things are completely valid, and also all the reasons why the Orioles do what they do are completely valid. And also, like, which player are you sitting down in a room today on this off day? Call them to the office, say, sorry, I know you're off today. Got to come to the ballpark. We need to have a meeting. We're going to need you to shorten up your swing, go from being a guy who tried to hit for power. We know you have contact ability that you don't use, that you have the ability to make more contact than you do. Your offensive profile will suffer, and the team will be better. Which players on the Orioles roster do you think could reasonably do that with?
Gunnar Henderson.
Gunnar Henderson's problems are that he swings at pitches below the strike zone for the first time in his career. That's what's going on with Gunnar Henderson. These players are drafted to do exactly this. Like,
I think he misses a good amount of pitches in the zone, though, especially with 2 strikes. There's a reason his strikeout percentage is high.
Yeah, I mean, I don't.
I'd have to look up his zone swing percentage.
I'm sure we're both right.
His chase percentage is definitely up.
Yeah, and it's a lot of pitches down in the zone. He's getting himself into bad counts. His approach is not what it should be right now. What I'm trying to say is that the Rays are built for this. The Rays are built for that. The Orioles traded 4 prospects to them.
And a pick.
And they traded 3 prospects for Zach Eflin. Pretty much all of them are like contact guys. Like Slater DeBrun controls the strike zone and makes good contact.
Caden Bodine,
really good contact rates, really controls the zone. This is what they are built for. The Rays are built for exactly what they're doing. The Orioles are not built for that. They're built for slug. They're built to do this. So like, there are reasons why they're built that way. There are reasons why they're taught the way that they're taught. There's nothing wrong with it if it worked. Over the course of the, quote unquote Orioles being relevant, I don't think they're relevant anymore, but it worked for just as long as it hasn't worked. It's just that it's not working for these 2 particular years. So the idea that it can be different is like, sure, but I think what I've kind of arrived at with pretty much everything about this team is that like, for it to be different, everything has to change. You can't just say like, all right, pivot. Like, let's all just do something different right now.
Right.
Are they going to have a 4th set of hitting coaches in 4 years next year? Like, are they going to have a 3rd manager in 3 years? Are they going to have a new everything? Like, that's everything we're talking about is that. And like the idea that they would say what we're doing is wrong when they've had 3 occasions to do that, basically. Ryan Fuller and Matt Borg-Schulte left after the 2024 season. Cody Ashe and that group left after last season. Every single time they went back to guys who do the things that they like to have happen. So what about these 2 months are different from the 2 seasons before it that will give them the reason to stop believing in what they're doing? And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying like, this is what's going to happen. So like, if that's this is what's going to keep happening. So the idea that it can change is like, of course it can change. Anything can change, but it's not going to.
Andy, you were there in St. Pete as well when Kyle Bradish spoke to the media after the game and talked about the Rays lineup being so hard to face. And he talked about how, unlike other teams, the Rays don't always try to do damage with everything. What did you make of that quote? What do you make of the Orioles offense overall right now?
Two things really quickly before I get onto that.
Sure.
The Baltimore has the third highest strikeout rate in baseball, and the Rays have the lowest strikeout rate in baseball. That's just another example that the Rays put ball in play. So,
what are the numbers?
Orioles are 24.7% strikeout rate, and the Rays are 18.7%.
Okay, so that basically is like 2 a game.
Yeah.
Which is a lot unless it's not. Like, that's a large gulf, and that's 2 strikeouts per game. And I'm not saying that's wrong. It's just we're talking about, like, it depends on when those strikeouts happen. There's a lot.
Sure.
I needed to say that. I actually didn't need to say that. I felt compelled to say that. Go on.
Gunnar Henderson, really fast. Interestingly enough, he is swinging at pitches in the zone at the lowest percentage of any season of his career so far, although it is a fraction lower. So it's 65.9% this year in zone swing rate. His career average is 66.8. So we're talking a tiny bit. His zone contact percentage is actually the highest this year as has ever been in his career, which is a very interesting thing. The issue, however, is his chase rate is astronomically higher than any other season. It is at 34.6%. So that is a big issue.
John.
Yeah, point for John.
We're not keeping score. Where's the
34.6%
whiteboard?
chase
Where's the
rate.
whiteboard?
Yes, so that is it's less about missing in the zone. It probably actually there is probably something to taking pitchers in the zone that we're seeing from more than just Gunnar Henderson.
They do that a lot.
Yes, they do that a lot.
They have the third highest, had yesterday when I was looking, the third highest like called strike rate. And it's like when you combine like the CSW, which is really a pitching stat, there's is like by like a percentage point, the second highest in baseball. It's
Hold on, I do want to get Andy's thoughts on Bradish and
John
and the Orioles offense.
Cutting me off. What the heck? No, I'm joking. John knows.
I only have like 15 more minutes. I got to get my shit in.
He said it, but we have an expletive tag on.
Yeah, we don't have the mute button that got me knocked off 105.7.
Exactly.
Anyway, Bradish's quote was obviously fascinating. I think my interpretation was he was talking about the teams he generally faces. Rather than adding his own teammates, which would be.
I don't think it was a shot across the bow.
Yeah,
like people took it to be.
But we can't. But as we analyze and discuss this as we are wont to do in a TMZ manner, as some might say, the thing that is interesting is that it does appear that Baltimore, and something we know about their hitting philosophy is that they want to do damage with every swing, and there is a benefit to hitting the ball hard. That is a benefit. That is a good thing, objectively a good thing. But when you focus a lot on doing damage with every swing, perhaps that trickles into not swinging at certain pitches that are in the strike zone, but maybe not in that perfect go zone, so to speak, where okay, if I get a pitch in this exact location, I'm gonna crush it. What the Tampa Bay Rays do is they battle really well, and then as Kyle Bradish was saying, like when there is a mistake, they're not missing it. They do still get that ace swing off. They do still get the power percentage is really high, and it was a fascinating series to watch because those are frustrating at bats. Like if you watch, like if you're in the Baltimore dugout and you're watching the Tampa Bay Rays hit, it's like, my goodness, none of these are easy. Like none of these at bats are 1, 2, 3, swinging at balls, outside the strike zone. Like none of that is easy. And so it's that I think that's what we noticed pretty obviously. So while barrel rate, is 5%. Hard hit rate is 33.1%. Average exit velocity, 87. Those are all near the bottom of the league for Tampa Bay. They have an on-base percentage that is 336, which is third highest. So they're finding ways to get on base. Is that sustainable? We'll find out, right? It might not be. But at this exact juncture, it's working really well. They're putting the ball in play, putting pressure on the defense. They're not striking out that much. And the benefits of that is when things go right, they go really right. I'm thinking just right now, like, the thing they really do well is like they're not necessarily getting themselves out, and not saying that Baltimore does that all the time, but they make sure that they're not chasing outside the zone and striking out, which are surefire ways, no matter what else you do to get yourself out.
Yeah, and they play good defense. They are 6th in baseball in defensive runs saved. The Orioles don't. They're 22nd in baseball in defensive runs saved. They run the bases better than the Orioles. They have 51 stolen bases on the season. The Orioles have 26. Little things like the double steal, which added an insurance run for the Rays in the bottom of the 8th, where they steal second, steal home. Haven't seen the Orioles do anything remotely like that. They take advantage of the margins better than most teams, better than almost any other team. And it is especially notable when you look at the pitching side of things. They are first in MLB in starting pitching ERA entering Wednesday. The Orioles are 28th. You look at their starting rotation. After they traded Shane Baz to the Orioles for 4 prospects and a draft pick, they haven't missed Shane Baz one bit. Shane Baz, his ERA dropped below 5 yesterday. He was pretty solid. The Orioles are going to hope. Yeah, we're throwing a parade.
There it is.
There it
Sub
is.
5.
The Rays rotation, meanwhile, Nick Martinez has a 1.51 ERA. He signed to a 1-year, $13 million deal. That's $5.5 million less than Chris Bassett signed for the Orioles. Drew Rasmussen, a 3.19 ERA, acquired in a trade with the Brewers in 2021. Shane McClanahan, first-round pick, and he's got a 2.82 ERA. Steven Matz, who pitched against the Orioles yesterday, 3.86 ERA coming into yesterday. He signed a 2-year, $15 million deal this offseason. That's almost nothing. And then Griffin Jacks, 3.54 ERA. He pitched earlier in this series as well, acquired in trade with Minnesota. You look at what the Orioles rotation...
Converted reliever. Look at Griffin Jacks,
reliever as well.
Reliever, yeah.
You look at this Orioles rotation right now and how they got their guys. They haven't gotten what they've needed from the guys they've acquired via trade, like Shane Baz and Trevor Rogers so far this year. They haven't gotten what they've needed from their cheap contracts in Zach Eflin and Chris Bassett. They haven't even taken a pitcher in the first round under Mike Elias, so they robbed themselves a chance to get an ace like Shane McClanahan. And by the way, Shane, the Rays are looking like they absolutely dominated the Shane Baz trade. Unfortunately, at this juncture, Keenan Bodine is a top 100 prospect by some outlets, and they are not skipping a beat in terms of their rotation. So the Orioles not only are struggling to develop their pitchers, they're struggling to identify pitchers from other organizations. The Rays are building this thing on speed, contact, defense, and pitching. The Orioles are doing the exact opposite, and one team it's working out for, and the other team it's not.
Yeah, and I think I'm gonna not correct. I'm gonna address a verb tense you use there. Are building a team.
Have built for decades.
The Rays have done the same thing under multiple general managers and front offices and regimes for a very, very long time at this point. They have a process and a plan, and we kind of touched on this 3 days ago. And I think as I'm wont to do, it was not only not a completed and well thought out thought, but I also used a bad analogy. But I think I have a better analogy and one that is a little more appropriate for this program. The Rays, I am a person that likes to go to Marshall's and the stores like it. There's 2 ways to go about building out a wardrobe. If you have $100, if you give me $100, I can go to Marshall's and buy like 7 t-shirts, and I will be happiest guy in the world to have 7 t-shirts. They'll be for different occasions. Some of them I might never wear. Some of them might turn into like go-tos, and some of them might, I could wear them once, and if I get grease on them, like, who cares?
Sure.
I spent like $12 on it. Like, it's not the end of the world. Or I could buy one $100 t-shirt. And if anything happens to that shirt, I'm really screwed. And it also has to be really good, and it has to be like a signature thing. The Orioles were trying to do the Rays thing. The Rays turn over guys like crazy. The Rays would look at the Orioles roster right now, and even if things were going great, they'd be like, Adley Rutschman, pretty close to free agency. Like, let's get 6 players for him. Trevor Rogers, really good year. Doesn't matter if we think he's going to be good again next year. We're going to get 5 players for him. They would do what they did with Shane Baz, obviously. They would keep replenishing, and they would get guys who can do things. And we're talking about lower floor players, I think it's fair to say. There are higher floor players, it's fair to say, that the Rays traffic in, but they get the types of guys they need, and they know what those are, and they have them in volume. They have a ton of prospects all the time. They can replenish their roster. They have guys who can do things. They move them on. They get 5 more guys, and 2 of those guys work. We talked about the Shane Baz, Chris Archer. It was Matt Garza who was traded for. That was the early stage Rays thing we were talking about. And like, the Orioles started down that path, and then they got off that path. Now they're trying to buy the best $100 t-shirt they could find. And there's nothing wrong with that, but like, that's the shirt you got. They started trying to do like one thing, and now they're doing another thing. And really, they're doing neither thing well at this point, because they gave themselves a chance to, they gave themselves a lot of swings early in the draft. And I think they did a decent job at some of those, and some of those players haven't panned out yet. And then the focus shifted. They started trading away prospects. They started thinning out their depth. They started playing big time in free agency, to the extent that you could say that, I mean, they spend a lot of money in free agency. I don't think we're talking about like making huge splashes other than Pete Alonso, but they're just doing something completely different than A, what the Rays do, and B, what they set out to do. And you could make a case that they are suffering in a lot of ways for just the mere fact that those are very different things that they're trying to do.
Andy, where do you shop?
I'm more of an Old Navy guy. I can usually get 13 t-shirts for $100.
That's bang for your buck right
Andy,
there.
Do you own 13 t-shirts though?
No, I have like 5 changes of clothes. And I just live out of a backpack usually. I'm just a nomad.
One for every member of the rotation.
Yeah. I will say, just to jump on, just to jump on this train, it's like commendable what the Rays have done, but I just want to remember that they have not won a World Series.
None of these teams that are doing that have won anything.
They have reached the World Series twice, I believe. In 2020, that weird season, they reached and did not win. And in 2008, I think, was the other. So more success, obviously, than Baltimore has done in the last since the turn of the century, really. But just want to note that this is not a surefire way to build. You can build something, and they have built a really amazing project that is getting bang for your buck. They're shopping at Old Navy, and it's old. It's reliable, and it is. It's important to have a competitive ball club routinely, not year in, year out for the Rays, but generally competitive. But there are a lot of things organizationally that Baltimore, to be a more of an AL East juggernaut, which they're not doing right now, they need to do, which is the ballpark upgrades, which Baltimore is doing, building out, more, fan focused stuff. I mean, you go to the Tropicana Field, nice ballpark, but there's 13,000 a night, so that there are, the Rays aren't, from baseball on-field sense and player development sense, they are gold standard, but not in every single facet. So I just want to, kind of mention that as well. But it is interesting. Just I was talking to, one agent recently, and he felt like it was a pretty, he was wondering whether there was a direction underneath the player acquisition strategy for the Orioles, and like John mentioned it, like Baltimore wanted to kind of follow that Cleveland, Tampa Bay model of building up and kind of having a relatively lightweight payroll and basically bashing above their pay level. Now, like, as the team has moved into new ownership, they are spending more money. This is a franchise record payroll. Pete Alonso, was a big splash. It does seem like a little bit of a difference. It was like a necessary shift, right? Like they needed to try to go get some big names. It's just interesting that the shift didn't necessarily translate to the pitching side. So we have seen under Elias that Baltimore doesn't necessarily draft pitchers very highly throughout his tenure. We haven't seen the international market yield pitching yet. And there hasn't been the big free agency splash, Corbin Burns in a trade. But while they went out and spent big money on Pete Alonso, a hitter, it's just interesting that it wasn't maybe the full, tilt into that new style of, splashing money, because it didn't include the pitching staff. I don't know if any of that makes sense, but
no, I think the problem is, you would hope when you got David Rubenstein on as your control person that you would get the best of both worlds. You would still have the player development, the player acquisition abilities of a team like the Rays. I know they were the gold standard in that facet, but a small market team that is working the edges that the Orioles were for the first couple of years of the rebuild, where they're trying to make waiver claims and they're using their best abilities in the front office to identify players who are under the radar and acquiring those guys because they might be cheap, the type of Moneyball stuff. But you also combine it with a payroll that is in the middle of the market. So you can go out and splash and get Pete Alonso. And that you then can take the Rays model and say, well, we still have that player acquisition abilities of the Rays where we can work the margins, but also we can splash out and get a Pete Alonso to get us over the top, or make one of these trades and go get Shane Baz and give him a $60 million extension, so that we can't just be the Rays where we top out at a World Series loss, but we can get over the top. The problem is they're none of those. They're the worst of both worlds. They are not on the cutting edge, it appears, anymore of any of this. I mean, it seems like the Rays certainly are in terms of their player acquisition, in terms of what they identify, in terms of how they develop these guys. They are still on the cutting edge. The Orioles, whether they're not identifying the right stats, sure, their drafting has still been among the league's best, but their players have stopped developing to a certain extent. You're looking at the point now where most of the guys on this team, their best year was 2 years ago. And some of the guys that they've gone out there and made huge splashes to get, like Baz and so far Alonso, aren't being the superstar players that you thought they would be yet.
Yeah, and I think that kind of speaks to the idea of, and nobody's saying that this team needs to like tear it down and rebuild again, but you do that because being in the middle is like the worst place to be.
Yes.
And the alternative, there are two options. You can go like full, big time, or you can strip it down. And I think it's a pretty hard kind of whatever fence to sit on. You don't want to sit on a fence. You don't want to be balancing it. I don't think the Orioles, I wouldn't necessarily say it's about like talent evaluation or talent development, but there's only one direction of travel if you are trying to travel in the direction that the Orioles are. It's like to add, it's to expand, it's to improve. If the Orioles strategically, and I'm not saying that this is the thing that they would have done or should have done, but like if the Orioles were trying to do both things and live in both worlds, they would have traded Anthony Santander at the trade deadline in 2024. Like, because that would have been the thing to do. You would have gotten more than a draft pick for it. And like, they would have still added guys, but they would have done both. There is no doing both. You are either doing, and the Rays trade for guys. I'm not saying like they don't, but they trade away a lot more guys too. Their net is going in the other direction. They're getting younger. They're getting more controllable young players, and they're trying to just keep the train moving for as long as possible. And the Orioles shifted away from that.
Yeah, I do think though, like, don't you think that Eric Neander with the Rays would love to have the payroll flexibility of the Orioles? Like he to be in the middle of the market is still better than being at the bottom of the market. And you have these teams at the bottom of the market like the Rays. And another example is the Guardians, who are consistently near the bottom, that the Orioles manager came from, that always work the margins, that are consistently outperforming expectations, but have an incredibly low payroll. And if you gave them a little bit more money, maybe they would be a better team. The Orioles are not working the margins at all right now, and they're not getting the bang for their buck that they are looking for in these bigger splash deals.
Exactly. It's a really challenging position to be in. And like, I don't want this to sound like it's anything other than just like saying what's going on. Like, they're not good right now. There's a ton of reasons for that. And some of them you could have envisioned. Some of them are very hard to envision. And the problem with playing baseball on the field every night the way that they do is it makes space for these conversations. Andy, you probably have a million things that you want to write about this team that have nothing to do with them not being good. It's really hard to do that when this takes up so much oxygen. I have a lot of things that I would love to write that are not about this team not being good. I don't know when to do it. I don't know when to talk about it. I can't bring myself to do it. And when you get swept on the road to division rivals, it's really hard to have anything else be the case. So I guess this is just a roundabout way of saying that, like, none of anything of this is meant to absolve anyone, or like, it's just, you spend a lot of time thinking about what's going on, and like, it's really complicated. It's really confusing, and it's matters because they're not winning games right now. And it's really, really getting to the point where that matters.
Yeah. Andy, has your dog calmed down enough for you to? I want to get your dog's thoughts on all this.
I actually have to leave, but
yeah, John has to leave.
Hello, dog. Hello. She saw a fox go by the back window. It was very exciting.
That is exciting.
Yeah.
Andy, this is a Spurs hat. They're going to be the best team in the championship next year.
We're racing you to the bottom, John. We're racing you to the bottom.
Two guys convinced their team's getting relegated on Sunday.
Yeah, come on, you Irons.
I'm pulling for you.
Thanks.
Thank you. See you guys later.
Bye.
Andy, what are your thoughts on all this?
West Ham or the Orioles? Baltimore? Sure. I guess they muted their mic.
Oh, sorry. Well, we'll start with the Orioles, sir.
Yeah, start with the Orioles. Yeah, I don't know. There's understandable anger among the fan base. This was, it's just interesting because I don't know what to make of this every day. You I try to wrap my head around it. It has gone pretty wrong right now. They're 8 games below 500. There is technically a path back into it, just because the American League is pretty poor this year. But that's not, you don't want to hang your hat on, okay, everyone else stinks, so we're fine. Like, that's not something that's really a working model. I think what it comes down to is, it's just like this year, it's the entire thing. It's the players obviously need to play better. Coaching staff in whatever manner has to try to figure out a way to improve things. And then ultimately it comes on the front office and Mike Elias, because like it or not, the buck stops with him. Last year it was Brandon Hyde, who was fired. This year, who knows? But, it is it's basically, it's going to be on him at the end of the day. If this doesn't improve, that's the way these business decisions have to be made. He knows that. Should I asked him about his job security last year in Milwaukee about this time. I think that honestly, this day last year, I believe I asked him, and so he was well aware even last year that, there's expectations, and if you don't meet them, it kind of comes back on you. But Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I mean it's certainly it's a tough spot right now for Mike Elias, but the buck stops with him. I mean, he is the one who put this whole thing together, and when you pull the trigger on firing your manager like he did last year, you remove a level of culpability because you're not going to fire a manager. This isn't like your favorite sport, Andy, like soccer. You're not going to fire a manager this early in the season. You know, this is something that once you span multiple managers with Brandon Hyde and then interim Tony Mansolino, and now Craig Alvarez, the same problems keep repeating. And it seems like these problems are getting worse. And I think that's what's especially concerning for Orioles fans. All right, we'll take one more quick break before we wrap this thing up. Toyota knows your day doesn't slow down, so your vehicle shouldn't either. From the efficient Corolla and always-ready Camry to the adventurous RAV4 and spacious Grand Highlander, plus many models available with all-wheel drive, Toyota builds a lineup that shows up for every kind of driver. And right now, great financing and lease options are available to qualified customers, making it a perfect time to find the one that fits you. Find a great deal today at Toyota.com. Toyota, let's go places. All right, Andy, the Orioles are back home. I guess you could look at solace for that. The Orioles are back home to face a also underperforming Detroit Tigers team, a team that is 10 games below 500. The Orioles see their old friend Jack Flaherty on the mound Friday night. They've got Chris Bassett lined up for Friday, Brandon Young for Saturday, and then Trevor Rogers for Sunday. And Andy, I mean, the Orioles had a real opportunity. You mentioned it off the top with their three starting pitchers, their three best starting pitchers lined up to go in Tampa Bay. They lost all three of those games. I'm especially looking at that Sunday Trevor Rogers start because his last start out, which was Friday in St. Pete, went so poorly, and he was clearly emotional after the game because he can't tell what's going on that is wrong, but he feels like he is letting the team down, and at this point, the results have not been anywhere close to what he was expecting.
Yeah, it was, think about it again. You have the Rays coming right after Detroit, too. To kind of segue away from the Detroit series, I'm just thinking, like, Baltimore has gone to New York for 4 games and Tampa Bay for 3 games. Both road series, they got swept. They're 0-7 against those teams on the road. It's pretty clear that the gulf in class right now and potentially the rest of the season is really large. And I don't see how that can change on a dime. And, even if, personnel changes are made, player, changes are made, philosophy changes are made, which I agree with John. They're not going to suddenly change philosophies middle of the season, especially. I don't see how, they can compete with, the teams that we've seen. Obviously, Baltimore played better against New York at home. We'll see what it looks like this weekend, which will be a rainy weekend against the Tigers. And then the Rays
play these games.
Yeah, and then the Rays. So it's a tricky stretch. They're 3.5 back of the wild card, I think. 3 or 3.5 around there. And a good week can put them right back, on the cusp of that final wild card spot. A bad week can drop them to the bottom of the American League. It's, they're at a tipping point as they have been for a little while now, and things need to change in some facet. We'll see if it does. A lot of it probably, Baltimore put a lot of stock into Kyle Bradish and Trevor Rogers being co-number ones. Bradish looks more like expectations now. Got out to a better couple starts here recently. Trevor Rogers has regressed a lot since the beginning of the season, and especially since last year. That was always a risk. I think it's a little surprising to see such regression. He was not going to have a 1.81 ERA for 18 starts like he did last year, but right now it's hard to be in any ball games that he's starting. He definitely was really emotional after Monday's game in St. Pete. He says, he feels like he's letting the team down. I think nuance obviously goes more in depth than ever being on one player. However, Baltimore does need him to figure it out. They need better outings from Trevor Rogers too. So all of that is to say, it's a big week ahead, just like last week was a big week. Baltimore didn't perform well on the road trip. They won one of the 6 games against, one of them was against the Nationals, and then lost 2 others and were swept with the Rays. This is another big week, and we'll see if it turns out better. But at a certain point, they need to stop digging, and you're digging a hole right now, and season high 8 games below 500, and if it keeps going lower, there's really going to be no resurrection for it. So all of that is to say, this has been a tricky thing to wrap the head around, because it wasn't like I was coming into the year thinking this team was going to win 100 games, but at least thought it was going to be more competitive baseball than this, and we're not seeing the little things done right, and that's probably the most frustrating part.
For sure. The Orioles are 50 games into the season now, so they're approaching a third of the way through the season. We're entering the end of May here. They got to get going here, especially. All right. You can read all of Andy's great coverage on thebanner.com, where you can subscribe $1 for 6 months. He's been keeping everybody abreast on all of the social platforms as well. Twitter, Blue Sky, AF Kostka on those platforms as well. Andy, you've been on a media tour, a media circus, because everybody wants your thoughts. I'm glad we could have you here on the Banner Baseball Show to break down this team that everybody is pulling their hair out over. So it was a blast to have you
thanks.
on.
I don't know if anyone really needs my thoughts or appreciates them, but
I want your dog's thoughts, more importantly.
Yeah. I don't think she's liking what she's watching lately.
Yeah, as she would say, it's been rough. For Andy Kostka, I'm Paul Mancano. I'll have my review of Fast and Furious 4 for you on Tuesday's show, because Monday is Memorial Day. So in the